Chosen ones, you hear the rumors hammering against the edges of your name, but their noise does not fracture the core that heaven sealed in silence. You feel the glare of those who would rather see you dim than witness the verdict of light that stands on your skin like an unbroken covenant. They gathered their words like stones, certain that many projectiles would finally extinguish you. Yet every accusation cracked against an authority they could neither see nor measure. While they shouted your supposed failures, the sky answered nothing, because verdicts, written above clouds, are not revised by human commentary. Every arrow turned to vapor before it touched you, not because you were untouchable, but because your alignment with truth redirected their weapons into lessons. They mistook your trials for weakness, unaware that endurance is the language heaven speaks when it wants to remind the earth that truth does not beg for protection. You did not discover strength in applause, you discovered it in obscurity. When rooms were empty, when hands were absent, when only the eternal witness observed your resolve. Others searched for quick certainties. You studied in protracted uncertainty, and what you found there branded your spirit with authority no debate can dissolve. They measured you by volume. You were measured by substance, so every shallow metric froze and shattered under the weight of your quiet consistency. The world decorated counterfeit crowns. You carried an invisible scepter, forged in seasons where nothing looked royal, except the discipline that refused to surrender. Your silence did not indicate defeat. It hosted thunder, waiting until appointed moments to speak judgments that cannot be silenced once released. While many begged for platforms, you built foundations, and now those foundations thunder beneath your footsteps, even when you walk without announcement. They designed traps assuming you would chase recognition, but because you pursued truth instead, every snare closed on emptiness and advertised their miscalculation. You felt fire, but you learned that fire reveres integrity. So instead of consuming you, it welded your fractures into one seamless blade. The nights were long, but darkness only lengthens time for those who lack vision. And you carried vision like a lantern that never argues with dusk. Loneliness arrived, but solitude became a university, graduating you in secrets that crowds can never comprehend because their applause keeps drowning the lesson. They dismissed your prayers as echoes, yet every whisper you released registered as an instruction in the archives of eternity, waiting for strategic fulfillment. When doors closed, walls became altars, and altars do not need doorknobs to authorize encounters. They only need a heart that refuses compromise. While some worshiped convenience, you negotiated with sacrifice, and sacrifice signed documents that comfort never receives. Your setbacks were not interruptions. They were directional corrections, steering you away from corners where light would have been traded for validation. They tried to rename you failure, but heaven never updated your record, and the original inscription still glows with unedited accuracy. You mourned seasons that felt wasted, yet every tear irrigated soil where future victories now stand rooted like mountains. Pain pierced, but instead of bleeding despair, you bled conviction. And conviction is currency in realms where destiny is transacted. They laughed when you bowed under weight, not understanding that weight molds authority, and authority never rises lightweight. While the masses sprinted toward mirrors, you walked toward the mirrorless wilderness, and there you met the God who calls things that are not as though they are. The wilderness did not confirm your value, it revealed it, subtracting every metal the world would later attempt to counterfeit. Silence thickened, but silence is not absence. It is the sound language uses when vocabulary surrenders to revelation. Your heart heard pronouncements no ear around you could decode, and that private hearing became the covenant you now enforce publicly. They questioned your sanity, but sanity in a sleeping world often looks like madness. An awakening always disturbs comfortable illusions. While they celebrated temporary crowns, You built altars for eternal jurisdiction, and altars do not retire when fashions change. Your scars are not decorations, they are signatures, proving that battlefields recognized your presence and still failed to claim your breath. Every wound translated into wisdom, and wisdom speaks with an accent forged in pain, an accent that holds thrones accountable. They forecasted your collapse, but collapse never arrived, because roots grown in hidden places ignore announcements spoken from shallow pedestals. Storms came, yet storms cannot excommunicate trees whose roots drink from aquifers beyond the touch of surface turmoil. You stand now, with eyes that carry lightning, not because you love spectacle, but because revelation flashes whenever truth confirms itself in a life tested by contradiction. The air changes when you enter a room, not because of volume, but because alignment rearranges frequencies that buildings cannot refuse. They tried to crowd you with opinions, but opinions evaporate when confronted by lives that embody evidence. You stop defending your light. Light that spends energy justifying itself forgets to illuminate, so you let radiance remain its own argument. Accusers multiplied, but heaven does not count critics. Heaven counts stewardship, and your stewardship of truth qualified you for reinforcement others will never see coming. While they obsessed with trends, you conversed with timelessness, and timelessness invested dividends no calendar can estimate. Shadows followed, yet shadows confirm presence, and your presence confesses a covenant older than sunrise. You learned that destiny is not democratic, it is sovereign, and sovereignty does not request permission to advance. They built narratives without consulting your author, so their chapters dissolved upon publication, exposing plots never sanctioned. You carry a decree that predates architecture, therefore no ceiling engineered in ignorance can restrict your ascent. Doors once barred now open of their own accord, not because you force them, but because truth carries passcodes recognized by unseen sentinels. Tests multiplied, but tests are thresholds. Those who refuse them circle deserts. Those who embrace them inherit territory. You refuse the comfort of applause-driven progress, choosing instead the architecture of divine sequence, and sequence has now arrived at manifestation. The tongues that predicted your extinction must now recalculate because heaven recalibrated outcomes while they rehearsed insult. Every delay matured you, and maturity wields timing like a dagger, striking precisely when distraction sleeps. You understand now that obscurity is not exile, it is consecration, and consecration equips voices to thunder without echoing vanity. Money, fame, and status knocked, but you answered only to purpose, and purpose arranges resources without enslaving souls. While the stage glittered, you sharpened character, because character sustains weight that charisma alone will drop. They boasted of speed, you mastered direction, and direction will always reach destinations speed cannot map. Now you stride through atmospheres once hostile, and hostility bows because prophecy outranks gossip. The ground beneath you remembers nights you wept on it, and now yields harvests that refuse compromise. Heaven keeps record, and that record overrides slander written in fading ink. Truth armored you, not with denial, but with clarity, and clarity slices illusions without apology. Your footsteps echo verdicts, and verdicts echo chambers where eternity convened in your favor before time tried to contradict you. They see resilience, they cannot trace origin, because origins are secured behind curtains they never dared to open. While they negotiated relevance, you conversed with purpose, and purpose never issues discounts to those allergic to discipline. Every breath you take now instructs dimensions, reminding atmosphere that light endures sabotage and still shines undiminished. The throne of opinion cannot prosecute destiny, because destiny was acquitted before accusations began. You are not the sum of attacks survived. You are the revelation those attacks inadvertently advertised. Celebrate nothing that flatters but contradicts truth, because flattery sedates warriors, and you were never enlisted for comfort. Heaven trusted you with silence because only those who can steward silence can be trusted with thunder. Now thunder travels in your voice not to entertain, but to awaken sleepers who thought darkness permanent. You do not convince, you expose. You do not persuade, you reveal. You do not compete, you embody. Stand, therefore, without apology, because apology is for error, and your existence is correction. Release the light without restraint, because restrained light becomes shadow, and you were not authorized for half measures. Let the story be theirs to rewrite. You already carry the manuscript none of them can access. Move forward, as prophecy in motion, aware that every step drafts new legislation in territories once governed by fear. Maintain silence where arguments crave birth, because silence is sometimes the loudest roar. Guard your energy the way kings guard borders, because energy fuels mandates, and mandates outrank moods. Continue walking in truth, for truth is oxygen in environments where lies suffocate themselves. Remember that heaven backed you before earth noticed you, and that endorsement cannot be rescinded by councils unaware of its origin. Your assignment is not to prove worth. Worth is the evidence that assigned you. Refuse the lure of vindication. Vindication is a distraction when destiny already ruled in your favor. Breathe authority, exhale certainty, and let wavering minds adjust to atmospheres you now steward. Do not seek agreement. Agreement is accidental when alignment is sovereign. Live unmoved, because movement in response to rumor is choreography for the insecure. Let your light confront darkness without dialogue, for dialogue with deception lends honor to lies. Advance until resistance becomes a stage for demonstration, not a barrier for retreat. Carry peace like an armored chariot, because peace, weaponized, is the terror of chaos. Hold vision with iron grip, knowing that slippery hands drop futures. Guard hope, for hope magnetizes outcomes that logic cannot schedule. Speak less, execute more, and let manifestation complete arguments your words never needed to begin. Now rise, not as survivor, but as standard. Act, chosen one. Walk the path heaven cleared while others debated its existence. Illuminate realms where compromise once reigned. Conclude nothing, because beginnings now multiply. Move because destiny waits for no timid hesitation. Transform silence into decree, breath into covenant, presence into verdict. Step forward and let heaven prove what earth tried to deny.